It is nearly the end of 2022, and this year has brought us some fantastic games and some other games. So I thought, why not do a ranking list of every single game I've played on the Nintendo Switch in 2022 and see how they stack up against each other. One thing to just quickly note, not all of these games have I played to completion, and I was still doing my PhD in the first half of this year, so the games are definitely stacked towards the end of the year more than the beginning. But altogether, I think we have a great mix of games here. We have first-party games, AAA games, and also a good stack of indie games as well. But before we get into the actual rankings, let's go through each of the tiers. I'm kind of using two criteria to grade the games. That's value for money, and did I have fun while playing it? And those two things are going to determine which of the tiers they go into. Now at the bottom, we have D tier. These are games that I not only thought were overpriced, but also games I didn't have fun with, and other than playing them day one of release, I literally never picked up again. Above that, we have C tier games. These are games that are overall okay, but they definitely are not worth the money they currently cost on the eShop. Then we have B tier. These are games which I feel like are priced correctly, and overall good games. I just have some minor gripes with them. Above that, we have the A tier. These are games that are definitely worth your money and are among some of the best games on the Nintendo Switch. The only real thing that distinguishes an A tier game from an S tier game is the experience. Do I think this game has had a profound effect on me and will outlast the lifetime of the Nintendo Switch? Not every great game will be an S tier game, but I think that's what makes it so special. We're going to start with a little to the left. I played this on stream not that long ago, and it is an adorable puzzle game. But it's not like a frustrating puzzle game like Professor Layton, where there's like hidden tricks, things you really need to think about. These are more of like tidying up, satisfying puzzles. Although the game itself is a bit short, a lot of the puzzles have multiple solutions to them, which definitely gives it some replay value. I think for me, it's between B and C. My only slight worry is that it's quite expensive for the length, but also they give you daily puzzles that are unique to you. So I enjoyed it. It's short. We're gonna start with B, I think. Let's get some of the negative ones out the way. Mario Strikers. Mario Strikers on the Wii is probably one of my favorite Wii games. I have so many incredible memories associated with sitting with my brother playing that game for hours. The two of us would even take on other duos on the internet and have a great time. This game sucked. I do not care for the updates they gave us. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they made a £55 game have no single player whatsoever. It's a game that had so much potential, but I think they focused so hard in making it a fair, competitive game that they lost all the fun elements, and I have never picked it up since day one. Okay, actually, the next game we're going to talk about needs a formal apology. I messed up. It's rare for my opinion on a game to change this drastically, but man, I really messed up when I spoke about Harvestella last. For those who don't know, Harvestella is an RPG mixed with a farming sim. This game possibly has one of the slowest beginnings to a game humanly possible. However, once it starts getting good, it gets really good. The world building and the story are honestly incredible. The combat gets a lot more fun as you go through the game, and the farming elements remain surprisingly important throughout the whole game. It's basically the only way you can make money and really progress in terms of getting better equipment for yourself. The thing I missed when I was first speaking about this game is the importance of the story and the characters. In the first 10 hours, every single character seems really flat, plain, like there's not a lot to read into it. But once you start doing the characters' stories and a few of the side quests, you realize how fantastic the writing really is. It's rare that side quests in a game make me this emotional, but Harvestella managed that not only in its character quests, main story, but also in some of the small side quests. The reason why I'm hesitant to put it in the A tier and maybe put it in the B tier is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's the graphics. There's still no disputing the fact that they still look a bit hazy on the Switch and definitely needed some further optimization. And for me, it's also the lack of voice acting. Harvestella and Xenoblade 3, I feel, have similar levels of script writing. The story and the world is beautifully thought out. But the thing stopping me from feeling like it's real and really feeling a connection to some of these characters is the fact that there's not a single proper cutscene in the entire game. Whenever there was something seriously dramatic happening in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you saw it in beautiful detail. And that's completely missed in Harvestella. Oh, and also one thing that really bugged me about the game, they reused character models. I've helped out multiple kids that look exactly the same and done multiple side quests of other characters that are literally identical. Just do something, change their hair color, anything to not make me spot within 2 seconds you have reused assets. So it's going in B tier for those reasons, and also the price. This is a full price Nintendo Switch game. And it doesn't quite have the Nintendo polish, although we'll be getting back to that quote later on. So after that, we should probably talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. No surprises for guessing where that was going to go. I think I can count on one hand how many times I have cried playing a Nintendo Switch game. And I can count on one finger how many times a Nintendo Switch game had me blubbering on the settee. And that was this game. I was a huge lover of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. My only gripe with that game was that it was maybe not suitable to play on the train when I was going home for Christmas. No prizes for guessing why. Visually, this game did not have the same issues that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 had. But thankfully, the storytelling, the world building, and everything I loved about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was present in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and improved on. To me, this is one of the best stories on the Nintendo Switch, hands down. And some of those characters are some of my favorite characters I have ever had the pleasure of playing as on the Nintendo Switch and on any console altogether. I don't think I can truly put into words my love of the Xenoblade franchise, but this definitely felt like the pinnacle of everything they had been working towards over the years, and is by far one of my favorite games on the Switch. Definitely an S tier game, and a game I cannot stress enough how truly incredible I found it. Right, next we're gonna go Nintendo Switch Sports. I feel like it needs to go A tier because there's one thing Nintendo does better than every single other console without a shadow of a doubt, and that is family games. I don't pick up Nintendo Switch Sports that often, but whenever I go home to my family, it gets put in immediately. There's not many games on any console that you can play with people who have no experience gaming, but Nintendo Switch Sports is the best game at that. I know for sure we're going to be playing Nintendo Switch Sports on Christmas Day, and I'm so glad the golfing update has finally arrived because that's right up my parents' alley. It's a game that just shows Nintendo at its finest. My only wish is that they brought baseball back, okay? I loved baseball. I thought it was one of the best ones on the Wii. I need it back. Next, we're going to talk about Pokemon Legends Arceus. It's either an A or a B, and I can't decide. This game did so many things right, but the things it did wrong really bugged me. I'm going to leave it for A for now. My issue is the gameplay mechanics themselves were so much fun. The way you caught the Pokemon, I adored. I'm not a big fan of battling, so this was a perfect game for me. The shiny hunting was so much fun to do. I loved the outbreaks and everything about them, and how much fun it was to later get into the mass outbreaks. I loved even those as well. I just had a few issues. The big one was the story. Although the story itself isn't bad, I just wasn't a fan of how the game delivered it to us. It felt very heavy, very text heavy, and it really slowed down the game a lot. I also wasn't a big fan of the fact that once you had finished in one area of the map, you had to come all the way back to the town, wait for that to load, to then go back out to whichever other area you wanted to go. And the other thing was, I had a lot of fun playing this game, but I couldn't play it as long as I could play Sword and Shield. And I haven't quite figured out why that is. I don't know if it's because the shiny hunting maybe was too easy, or the game felt too repetitive in the ways in which you shiny hunted. But there was just something missing that meant that although I loved the game, I didn't come back to it as much as I thought I would. Maybe it belongs in B tier. Is that harsh? Look, we'll leave it in A for now, and then we'll reevaluate when other games have gone in. I'm going to do another easy one. The Bratz game, it was like 4 hours long, and it cost 35 quid. No matter how much Bratz nostalgia you have, you cannot justify that amount of gameplay for that price, okay? Although saying that, it did have voice acting, but no, we're going to keep it there. No regrets. Okay, let's also talk Bunny Park. Probably one of the games I struggled with on the Nintendo Switch the most. It's going in D tier because the controls were not great on the Switch. Now, I've been told that on the PC it handles a lot better, but at least when you're using the controllers themselves, I really struggled to have fun with this game. Also on the Switch, it's way more expensive than Steam. I think on Steam it's less than £4. It felt closer to being a like idle mobile phone game than it did a proper Nintendo Switch game. Again, would be okay if the price was better, but for that price, it's going down there. Let's go back to a AAA game, and this is Kirby and the Forgotten Land. My biggest gripe with Kirby is that it wasn't longer. That's basically it. I love the graphics, I love the handling, I loved all the levels, all the abilities. It was so much fun. It felt kind of like a 3D type platformer, kind of similar to Mario Odyssey. But one of the things I really liked about it was that every time you did a level, you returned to the town where there was other stuff to do. Every time you progressed, the town got bigger and better. There were more things you could do in the town. There were mini games, and there was also the little gacha machine. There was a lot of fun to spend all your extra coins in. And I just fell in love with Kirby and all of his mouthful modes. A brilliant game, not quite S-tier material, but a fantastic game nonetheless. Back to another indie, and we have Hokko Life. Now, yes, I know I was very harsh about Hokko Life the last time I spoke about it. But I have had time to marinate, I've thought it over, and I think I'm going to say C tier. Some of the mechanics in the game could definitely feel better and feel less clumsy. And although definitely similar to Animal Crossing in its daily routine and things you get up to, it does bring some unique qualities like the furniture decorating that does make it unique. And as you progress and get more characters into your town, I can definitely see there being way more to do. I also love the fact that there are seasonal events in Hokko Life that they add, so there's probably going to be Christmas stuff soon, and I love when games do that. So no, it's not D tier, it's probably just slightly overpriced, but I know so many people love it and do have fun with it. I just didn't gel with how slow paced the game was, or how horrifying some of the characters were. Next is Fire Emblem Warriors, which is a Warriors-style game based on the characters of Fire Emblem Three Houses. And for those who don't know, Fire Emblem Three Houses is one of my all-time favorite games. I fell in love with that game from the characters, the cutscenes, the story, and also ended up really enjoying the combat in the end too. My issue with Fire Emblem Warriors was I didn't feel the payout was the same. I didn't feel as invested in the story or even connect with the characters in the same way I did in Three Houses. And overall, the cutscenes they didn't fill me with the serotonin that every single step of Fire Emblem Three Houses did. By no means is this a bad game. I just think if you fell in love with Fire Emblem Three Houses for the same reasons I did, you might not find this being your cup of tea either. So that's why I'm putting it in C tier. Next, let's talk about Soundfall. This is the dungeon crawler where you do everything in time to the music. I love the concept. I love the music. I just didn't find myself coming back to the game as much as I thought I would. I think a part of it is frustration. It's not really something you can chill in bed and play because you really got to think about staying on time with the music, thinking about when they're going to attack. So it's not exactly a chill, cozy game. I feel like C tier is harsh though because it is an incredible game and I love everything about it. It just personally stresses me out. We're going to go B. It needs to be like B.5. It's going there. Now, Bear and Breakfast, on paper, was everything I was looking for in my life. You play as a bear, and you build a bed and breakfast, and you manage it. But there's barely any repercussions. It's super chill and cozy. It just doesn't handle well on the Nintendo Switch. It's definitely a game that worked far better on the PC, and I think the controls were the reason I didn't really come back to it that much either. I think this game is perfect if you love management style games but don't like the stressful side of them. But yeah, if you can play it on the PC, do that instead. The controls are pretty awkward on the Switch. If you want something that did control well, and a game I thoroughly enjoyed and fell in love with, we have Cult of the Lamb. I think I would have put this in A tier because I know it started off with its problems, but from the most part, it sounds like they fixed a lot of the lagging issues that were found on the Nintendo Switch. And I've never seen a game so dark, yet so cute all at the same time. As I said earlier, dungeon crawlers are not really my thing, but it was worth it because I did it for the good of my cult. If I ran out of food, if I ran out of money, I would go off in a dungeon to know that my cult members would be safe. Not to mention it had an absolutely incredible Twitch extension that meant that my whole chat could be involved and be cult members. And although the premise of the game is very dark, you start a cult and destroy everyone who won't join your cult was surprisingly cute, and I love taking care of them, building them new things, getting them to work on my farm. It's a cult-style management game mixed with a dungeon crawler where both parts worked incredibly well. And it's up for a bunch of awards for good reason because it was such a unique concept, and so many people who wouldn't normally play dungeon crawlers were brought in by the guise of the cute animals. Another thing I loved about it was there was different difficulty settings, so even if you weren't a big fan of the dungeon crawling, you could make it pretty easy so that you could do it really fast and get back to cleaning up your followers' poop, which was a surprisingly large portion of the game. But I still loved it, A tier for sure. Then we're going to talk about We Are OFK. It's basically a game version of like a movie where you're kind of somewhat involved in it, moving around every now and again. Like, I'm not even sure any of the actions I did really had any repercussions. The soundtrack was so good. Each of the characters were written so well that made them feel like real people that you could relate to, and they were struggling with things that I too have struggled with. So overall, probably B, C tier. I'm gonna say C. Good game. The only thing I question is the price. Next is Let's Build a Zoo, which is an adorable zoo management style game, but it's not as technical as the likes of Planet Zoo, which is why I think it's perfect on the Nintendo Switch. The only thing making me think it needs to go in C tier and not B tier is apparently once you get later on with a real big zoo, you'll encounter some really big problems with the game. I had my fair share of glitches when I was playing it on the Switch, mostly with the controls. So whilst the gameplay and the controls work really well on the Switch, they had a great system for making it work with the controller. Game-breaking glitches sadly need to put it in the C tier, I think. But I did really enjoy the gameplay. It was a zoo management game, but it was simplified as much as you could make it while still being in control of every single element, if that makes sense. And the game had a big focus on breeding, so you could like select pairs to breed with and try and get some of the rarer breeds of each animal. And once you got far enough, you could crossbreed different animals and make really cursed concoctions. There's a lot to love with the game, especially the humor when it comes to making moral decisions, because yeah, you get moral points in it, but the bugs are letting it down. So C tier, unless they patch it, in which case it would easily become B, if not A. It's time to talk about Beacon Pines. If you're looking for value for money in terms of a fantastic game that costs nowhere near the Nintendo AAA price, look no further than Beacon Pines. By far one of my favorite games of this year, and that's because it's like nothing I have ever played. You play as the main character in the game, but also as the narrator. It's your job to make decisions that affect the entire narrative of the game, with the hope that you will find one with some semblance of a happy ending. It's one of those games where once you start playing, you cannot tear yourself away, and every single person I've spoken to who has tried Beacon Pines has also fallen in love with it. It's fully narrated, and don't get me wrong, it can be properly dark at places, but every single dark path you go down is worth it for when you go down another path that finally gives you some answers to some unanswered questions that the game throws at you. Whilst it's not long, it's definitely a fantastic experience, and I fell in love with Luca the moment I saw him run across my screen. If you haven't played it, definitely look it up. You will not regret it. One of my top games of 2022. Speaking of top games of 2022, No Man's Sky is also going in the S tier. Now, I know the Nintendo Switch version is not quite as complete as the other versions of the game. For example, you can't do some of the online things that you can do in every other version, but I didn't play No Man's Sky for the online features. I played it for exploration, and the port is so good on the Nintendo Switch. It allows you to explore endless space, literally in the palm of your hands. Every planet you go to has completely different conditions, and you'll find living animals, different minerals, different plants that you can all log and discover for the first time. Every planet you come across is in a solar system filled with other planets and moons and asteroids that you can go and explore. And once you find a planet that you've fallen in love with, you can set up a base and make that for your forever home, with both decorating and farming to keep you going there. There's also a ton of different modes you can play as well to accommodate whichever playstyle you want. You want to be hardcore? Turn on permadeath. You don't want to deal with anything dangerous? That's fine. Go in creative mode where nearly nothing can kill you. It's my most played game of 2022, and I think it might also be my most played game of 2023. I keep on going back to it. Okay, next is Cat Cafe Manager. And by no means is it the most complex game on the list. It is one of my go-tos in terms of what to play when it's like 2 a.m. I can't sleep. I just want to play something chill because it's straightforward gameplay, but it's just a way to keep your mind busy in a way that's not exhausting. It's kind of a management game, but it's like a bare bones management game. There's not a huge amount going on, like you're responsible for going out and buying the food. Other than that, you're just running, taking orders, making sandwiches, that kind of thing. So no, it's not the most incredible game on the list by any means. It fulfills a role in my daily routine that I have no other game for right now. And for that reason, we're gonna say B. Now, I nearly didn't include Wylde Flowers on this list. I've spoken about this before. This game is a really good game. The themes and the topics are just not suitable for me and where I am with my life and with my elderly relatives. It is a farming sim that has a story all about being a witch and also witchy cults and that kind of thing. But one thing that took me by surprise compared to other farming sims is the lack of loading screens. When you walk into a house, there's no loading screen whatsoever. In fact, it really creeped me out the first time I played it. There's only certain areas of the map which when you go into, there's a small loading screen, but it plays really nicely and really smoothly. The voice acting in it is also incredible, and although you can't customize your character because you play as a set character, I did have a lot of fun running around and learning about the NPCs, who, by the way, are also incredibly diverse. So B tier with an asterisk, because I definitely have not put enough hours into it. Let's get this heartbreaking game out of the way, Endling. I'm going to give it B tier because the story is heartbreaking and the gameplay is butt-clenching. You basically play as a mama fox trying to find her cub that was stolen. So you run around this map all the while trying to avoid humans and avoid dangers that could take your cubs. It's one of those games which is like insanely stressful, but you want to play it so you can see the mama fox succeed, if that makes sense. The only reason I'm putting it in B tier is I occasionally got a bit frustrated with the controls and with the gameplay mechanics, but overall it was a fun game with a great underpinning theme of conservation and looking after our world. Speaking of great games, we also have Dorfromantic. It's a solid B tier game because I can think of no better puzzle game on the Switch that is so beautifully calming. The game is beautifully simple. You just place the tiles down with the hopes of trying to connect as many edges as possible to the correct sides. The more sides you connect, the more points you get, and you try and make a beautiful landscape whilst unlocking more tiles to use in your next playthrough. Again, it's such a go-to game for me for when I'm feeling stressed or when I can't sleep. I could just lie in bed, pick it up for 5 minutes or 3 hours, and I don't find it frustrating whatsoever. I definitely also feel like not many people talk about it, so it's a hidden gem and a great relaxing game. Speaking of relaxing games, this brings me on to Lemon Cake, but I feel like it cannot go any higher than C tier because the price is so hecking high. Not only is the game pretty short, there's not much replay value, it has a really high price tag on the Switch. I love the premise of the game though. You had a bakery, you could serve people out the front of the bakery, and out the back of the bakery, you had a little farm area which you used to get ingredients. It had cool gameplay mechanics, like for example, people would get bored if you keep an item on the menu for too long, and you used your money that you earn every day to unlock more things that could lead you to earn even more money for each day the bakery was open. Whilst the gameplay itself was a lot of fun, once you finish the skill tree, there's not much more reason to play the game after that. Okay, let's talk Disney Dreamlight Valley. I am very much aware that this is an early access game. However, I have never played an early access game that released so few patches when the game was so broken. And that is where my problem lies with Disney Dreamlight Valley. The big Nintendo Switch patch came the same day as the huge content update. So what happened? Well, everything that was broken before was somewhat fixed. And then due to the update, a load of new problems came along, which means the Nintendo Switch player base have never had a moment in time where the game just worked. And the game is still frequently crashing for Switch players. And that is infuriating when the game itself has so much potential. Now, don't get me wrong, I know I was very negative there, but it's because I love it and because I want to be able to recommend it more that I am complaining. For those who don't know, Disney Dreamlight Valley is a life sim, kind of like Animal Crossing, but instead of Animal Crossing villages, you are helping out Disney characters with their problems. The stories are actually really fun, I enjoy doing them, and a few may be a bit grindy, but overall, it's one of those games where you can kind of sit in front of the TV and play at the same time and have a great relaxing time. I'm also curious as to what they're holding back for the full game release. If you don't know, later in 2023, the game will become free to play on all platforms, and obviously there will be in-game purchases. They've already said that every in-game purchase will not affect gameplay other than the DLC. So for example, you're not going to have to pay to get more energy to do things in the day. Instead, you'll be paying money to get like cosmetic items. I just really hope that they take some time to probably fix it on the Nintendo Switch so I don't have to keep placing this game in the C tier. I love it to pieces, but it crashes way too often to put it any higher. I know it's early access, but it's being ranked against finished games and it needs to reflect that. Speaking about games that I've had a rocky time with, let's talk about Splatoon 3. Technically, this game is incredible. It's a huge improvement on Splatoon 2 in so many ways, and there's even new game modes coming out this month. I just can't get into it, and I don't know why. Every single time I've played Splatoon 3, I have been matched in a very poorly matched game where I lose by miles. For some reason, at the moment, Splatoon 3 feels much sweatier than it ever did on Splatoon 2. I've been matched against absolutely incredible players, and it seems nearly impossible for me to win a game, which is not something I remember feeling in Splatoon 2. So this either means I just need to get good, which is a valid criticism because at the moment I'm not good, but it could also mean that there's not a lot of casual players playing the game. If all you have left in the player base are the hardcore players, then obviously the games are going to feel sweatier and harder. So I'm really hoping that Christmas, a load of kids get this game who suck. And then I can come in being mediocre and beat all of the kids, and then I can feel good at the game and enjoy it again, you know? So I'm fully aware this is a me problem with the lack of enjoyment I am having from losing. But also, this is me ranking my games, so I need to validate my own feelings. And I'm going to put it in B. I respect that the game is very good, but I also acknowledge that I'm not having as much fun with it as I thought I would. Speaking of B tier games, that's where I'm going to put 2 Point Campus. Again, I enjoyed it a lot, but maybe not to the extent I enjoyed 2 Point Hospital. But to me, the hospital version just kind of worked a little bit better. And again, it's a management style game on a controller, so it's never going to feel quite as easy or quite as nice as it does to play them on the PC. One game that surprised me about how much I loved playing it with a controller though was Lost in Play. This is a point and click game, and I was definitely envisaging this being a nightmare on a controller. But instead, this game was a complete joy to play, and I played it in 2 days from start to finish. I was obsessed. It also didn't fall into a lot of the pitfalls I feel like point and click games can fall into. Like, for example, I remember playing this one on my PC where every like 20 minutes I would have to look up how to do it on the computer because the way to solve it was so abstract, I literally would have never figured it out. Everything in Lost in Play made logical sense, and I felt like I could sit there for long enough and just figure it out by thinking. I thoroughly enjoyed Lost in Play and would definitely recommend it to anyone who enjoys point and click games. And I'm going to put it in the A tier because although short, I think it's priced pretty well for what it is. And I haven't found a point and click game to rival it so far. I've been trying to figure out where I'm going to place Ooblets for days. And it is between the S tier and the A tier. Ooblets is named after the adorable creatures that make up your dance battle team. They are incredibly cute. You can dress them up in outfits and hats, which I adore. And as I said before, use them in dance battles in this really cool card mechanic turn-based battle system. And you know what? I'm going to put it in S tier. It is, at its core, a farming sim game, but it's also so much more than that. Not only are the Ooblets super cute, the story is a lot of fun to play, and I also, much like Pokemon, want to catch them all. The game gives you a ton of reasons to keep on coming back. First of all, they have seasonal events. The Halloween one was adorable. I loved putting little Halloween hats on all of my Ooblets. But there's also going to be a Christmas event coming soon as well, which I cannot wait for. And they have this thing called Gleamy Ooblets. These are basically the shinies of the Ooblet world, only when they run around, they have a little rainbow that follows them. It is adorable. It's just a game that fills me with pure serotonin, and it's just the epitome of stress-free, fun gaming. Okay, next is Persona 5. I think I'm going to put this in the S tier as well. This is the opposite of Ooblets. Minimal serotonin, stress, and a very heavy story. But it's done in a wonderfully unique way, and in such a way that I cannot stop playing it. It's a really difficult game to describe, but it's basically based on turn-based combat. So it's kind of like Pokemon where different effects can be super effective. Although very heavy, the story is done so well. There's voice acting throughout the entire game, and there's a ton of quality of life features that make this game an absolute joy to play. Definitely look up the trigger warnings for it because they are vast, but if you're looking to dip your toes into the Persona series, it is a great one to start off with. Then we have the new Doraemon Storia seasons. I'm going to put this as a solid B. 100% worth the money and an absolute joy to play. And it had a few unique features which I haven't really seen in other Storia Seasons games. Like, for example, you play it as a boy, which means that dating isn't really something your character is able to do. So instead of focusing on your relationship with all of these characters, there's a lot more focus on the relationships other characters have with each other. And that part I did really enjoy. The only reason I'm kind of putting it in B tier is although the farming was enjoyable, there were a few parts of the game that really slowed down the gameplay for me. One of those was dealing with the animals. This seemed really slow. Like you had to physically push the animals out of their enclosure to get them outside. And also the mining just felt really slow and really restrictive. Overall, it was a very fun Storia Seasons game. And I love the fact that there was Japanese voice acting through the whole of it. We're on to our last 3 games, and this is going to be hard. We're going to start with Lonesome Village. This has puzzles kind of similar to OG Zelda, but underpinning the whole game is a kind of life sim-like element. The puzzles themselves in the game are so much fun, so varied. I absolutely adored doing them. And whilst the life sim elements were kind of basic, they were a lot of fun as well. Like you can decorate your house, but it's quite restrictive. You can also farm, and there's a ton of shops and villages you can go help out with tasks. One of the reasons I adored it though is underpinning the entire game was this dark story that you were trying to unravel. And I think one of the reasons I kept on coming back to this game was the story. For some reason you don't know, there is a villager trapped on every single floor of the dungeon tower. So every single time you finish a puzzle, it releases the villager and you learn a little bit more about the town's history and try and figure out how they all got here. And although this is a cozy staple, I just think it's missing the wow factor that takes it to being an A tier game. Potions Permit, however, is definitely an A tier game. To me, it's not quite S tier. It had a few bugs and glitches, and at times felt a bit grindy for no reason. But I have said this time and time again, I adore the game. It's a cozy game, but it's not a farming sim. And for that reason, I love it. You're basically brought into a town that hates chemists and are told that you will be working as a chemist. Your days are filled with healing the sick villagers of the town and unravel the mystery on why they hate you so much. Healing each villager has a fun little mini game, and with every villager you help out, your friendship with them increases and you learn a little bit more about the town and its people. Like with Ooblets, this game is a pure joy to play. And to me, it just feels so unique to every single cozy game I've played this year. I think one of the things that truly makes this feel special though is how well written each of the characters' stories are. Every one of the characters feels so unique with their backstories and their histories being so different to one another that it makes you want to work hard to increase the friendship level with each and every one of them. And despite a rocky start on the Nintendo Switch at first, there have been a number of patches that have come out making the game far smoother and a far better experience than some of the bugs that were out on day one. I've talked a lot about it, but for good reason. It's a game that holds so much joy inside of my heart. I love it. And this brings me on to the final game of the day. I left this one till last because it is definitely the most controversial, and that is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This is both the best and the worst Pokemon game all at once, okay? Hear me out. Graphically and polish-wise, this is the worst Pokemon game. There are graphical glitches and gameplay glitches throughout the whole story, and it only gets worse as you go through post-game. Sometimes the frame rate is so low, it feels like you're playing the game in slow motion. But the one thing I can't deny is how much fun this game is. I don't think I have ever had this much fun in a Pokemon game. I don't sleep, I don't eat, I just play Pokemon from the start of the day to the end of the day. I am obsessed. And so much so, it almost makes up for how buggy the game is. Now, the reason I say almost is I do acknowledge the state of the game being released for full price as a Nintendo first-party game is inexcusable. Despite how much fun the game is, there is no reason why that game should have been released in the state that it's in. Also, there's no excuse as to why Nintendo have not issued a full statement on whether or not we can expect the game to ever be fixed. We shouldn't have different standards just because it's Game Freak, but I also fully believe that I would rather have a fun game over a good-looking game any day. This is the first Pokemon game to have ever made me cry and to have ever had a semi-decent story that I have played so far. Also, I love how many events they're doing in the game at the moment with all of the raid battles, and the multiplayer game feature is just chef's kiss. And is it wrong for me to say that some of the glitches are so funny? I actually kind of love them. We've currently kind of got a Goat Sim Pokemon collab, and I'm not going to deny how funny some of the things I've seen on the internet about this game is. Despite it being fun, I don't think I could put it in S tier, A tier, or even B tier. But I also think that because it's fun, I can't put it in D tier either. I cannot put a game that I can envisage being one of my most played games soon in the D tier. Like, yeah, it shouldn't have been released in the state that it's in. But also, I'm having the time of my life. So, you know what? It's living in C tier. That's everything from me today. I think it was a bit of a long video, so thank you for watching until the end. And if you did watch till the end, in the comments down below, tell me what your favorite game you played in 2022 is. And if you want to see what games I'm looking forward to in December, click this video here. I'll see you next time. Bye.